Right, then we are live, and I can already see a lot of your comments, and apologies for being about 5-6 minutes late. But you got to understand that we're joining from two different locations, and technology is not always our best friend. So in that case, thanks so much for having patience and staying on with us. Ricky Patel is here. He always watches us from the US. He's saying his battery is dying, so I suggest connect your phone to the charger, because we'll be having a conversation for the next 20-25 odd minutes. Sahiba, the first question that I see in my comment list, which is buzzing at the moment, is with regards to Virat Kohli and his 100 Test match. People are upset that there will be no crowds at that Mohali cricket ground. Earlier, Sahiba, I had thought that this may be a directive of the state government, but what we've heard from the CEO of Punjab Cricket Association is that the BCCI has suggested that let's not have crowd at the stadium. Probably that's also backed by, let's say, the COVID data, or what kind of security can be provided. All of that put into place. I'm just wanting to know from the player's perspective, as someone who's played 100 Test match, it must be quite a bummer for him not to have the crowd around on such a special occasion for Virat.
Any game that you play, you want the crowd to be there. India has played in recent times without any crowds. Like for example, the recent series in South Africa, there were only the guys who had hospitality suites. Only they were there, but that was probably maybe less than about 1,000 people. So you want, when you play international cricket, you want the crowds to be there. Any performer, be it an actor, be it a cricketer, sportsman, he wants to play in front of the crowds, wants his skill sets to be appreciated by the crowd. And the 100 test is very special, very, very special. So, yes, it's disappointing that there's going to be no crowd, but I think the interest has been taken. The decision has been taken in the greater interest of everybody concerned, because when we came down here, I'm in Chandigarh at the moment, there was talk about, the cases having increased in and around the Mohali area where the match is going to be played. And that is the reason why I believe that the decision was taken not to have any crowds.
Oh, I mean, there were some suggestions, but maybe, I know it's hindsight, and maybe it's too late to take that decision. Do you think maybe because of that, the Test match could have been in Bangalore, the first one, which it was earlier scheduled, and Mohali, the second one? Or do you think logistically it made sense, because if you're playing in Dharamshala, it only makes sense that you play the first Test match closer to that venue? Sema, I lost your audio. I can't hear you. Will you exit and come in again? Sometime I think the connection gets, just exit and come back in again, and I'll wait for you. So that is Sunny Gavaskar still with us. If you heard him give that first answer with regards to should the Test match have been played in Mohali or Bangalore, as he was saying that probably at the moment the situation is such in and around Mohali, and I think Sunny Gavaskar is the best person to tell us that, simply because at the moment he is in Mohali, so he's traveled from Dharamsala covering those games, and has traveled now to Mohali. So I think he is the best person in that regard to tell us what sort of situation there is. As he was mentioning there, that cases have increased in and around Mohali, and probably that's why the BCCI decided that let's not have the game in or let's not have crowds in the stadium during the Mohali Test match, which is Virat Kohli's Test match. In fact, he goes on to mention that probably it's not just the 100 Test match, any Test match. Players would love to have crowds around, but the situation is such, and it's fluid, because situation may be very different in Dharamshala with regards to COVID cases, will be very different in Bangalore. So all that taken into consideration, we'll have to wait and watch what the situation is, and that's why probably they've decided not to have crowds in the game in Mohali, which is the 100 Test match of Virat Kohli. I'm just waiting on Mr. Gavaskar, because there seems to be some sort of an issue, and because of which we've had to let him go, and I'm just hoping that he can join back. Yeah, I think he's here right now. Yes, that's much better. Now I can see you. Yeah, and I can hear you as well. Sorry, you were saying about... Yeah.
So the thing was that the decision obviously has been taken with the greater goods interest, because when we landed here in Chandigarh, we heard about the fact that in and around Mohali, There have been a few cases of COVID, and the test match is going to be played at Mohali. So, with that in view, I would imagine that's the reason why the decision has been taken.
Okay, let's now talk about the T20I series that's just finished. Saiba, should we take all these performances that we saw here very seriously, or should we take them with a pinch of salt, considering that the opposition wasn't really top notch? How do we view all the performances from the Indian players in the recently concluded T20I series?
Well, look, it's not India's case. How the West Indies and the Sri Lankan selection committee picks their team. India can only play the team that the opposition has put onto the ground. And in view of that, whatever performances we saw from the Indian team was very, very heartening indeed. Very heartening, because what it showed was, even without your best players, even without your regular players, India have the reserves who can come and deliver the goods. We saw that without Bumrah and Shami in the matches against the West Indies, the Indian team did exceedingly well, winning all 6 games. They were there in the last T20. You didn't have Virat Kohli, Rishabh Pant, and despite that, India's batting was still pretty good to beat the West Indies. And against Sri Lanka as well, there was no Kohli, there was no Rishabh Pant. India was still too strong for them. In the final game, there was no Bumrah, no Bhuvneshwar Kumar, no Deepak Chahar. But the way the Indians bowled, that can only be good news, because the more options you have, the better it is for the selection committee and the team management.
The other question that we're getting a lot in the chat box is with regards to Suryakumar Yadav and Shreyas Iyer at the moment. Do you think the two of them can play in the 11 together?
I think both of them can be accommodated in the team, because what it does is that means that you might have to go, if you pick both of them in the kind of form that they are in, it makes sense to pick them. Obviously, we're looking now, and the World Cup is in October, November. There's a lot of time to go. But what happens is that you have these top 5 batsmen, probably the best batting lineup in the world, with Kohli at 3, Rahul and Rohit Sharma to open, and then Suryakumar Yadav and Shreyas Iyer at 4, 5. I think it'll be an amazing batting lineup with Rishabh Pant at 6, Jadeja at 7. But what happens then is that then you will go in with 5 bowlers.
Yes.
Generally what you tend to do is you look to have a 6th option in case one of the bowlers is having a day off. He's not really bowling well. He's being taken to the cleaners. For that, you look at a 6th option. In which case, I think the Indian team will have to look at somebody like a Shreyas Iyer, who bowls a bit of leg spin, or a Virat Kohli to come in and bowl a couple of overs in a worst case scenario where the bowlers are getting hammered.
So in that case scenario, as you're talking, if you have that sort of a batting lineup till 5, if you got Shreyas Iyer or Suryakumar Yadav, who is batting at 5, 6, you said Rishabh Pant also makes your team. In which case, even if Hardik is back to full fitness and is in good form, doesn't make the 11 as of now.
Look, batting orders can be very flexible in this ultra short format of the game. That's the key. That you have to be ready to do the unexpected and take the opposition by surprise. And the fact that India has got this kind of batting depth, I mean, you saw the way Jadeja batted in these last 2 games, and not easy to bat, because those pitches were pretty pacey pitches. It had something in it for the quicker bowlers. And if anything, if ever India is looking to go and play in South Africa or in Australia, where there's carry and bounce, they should have a camp at Dharamshala. They should have a camp at Dharamshala on pitches like this. This is where they'll actually get very good practice of playing where the ball is coming under the armpit and not where the ball is coming, towards the knees or between the knee and the tummy. So that is obviously for the future. But the pitches, the bowlers, the Sri Lankan bowlers are bowling pretty quick, and the way Shreyas Iyer and Jadeja in particular batted, that was amazing. That was terrific. It actually tells you that India is blessed to have this kind of a batting lineup.
So those are interesting thoughts from Sunny Gavaskar. As things stand right now, I asked him if both Sky and Shreyas can make it into the playing 11, and in which case does Pant go out? But he's got Pant in his team as well, which means one of the all-rounders, whoever you're looking at playing in that number 6 position probably for India between Venkatesh Iyer and Hardik Pandya. As of now, might find it very tough to make it into the playing 11. But as he said, it's flexible. There's still time for that T20 World Cup, so you'll have plenty more games going into that tournament, and then probably you can decide what would be the ideal combination. A word on, because you had spoken about Ravindra Jadeja, Sai, I think all eyes were on him because he's coming off an injury layoff. You wanted to see with how his bowling rhythm is going to be like, whether he'll be in nick when it comes to with the bat. What did you make of whatever little you saw of Ravindra Jadeja straight out of the blocks? No issues coming out of an injury?
Absolutely none. It looked as if he was playing all this while, and sometimes a good break can do that to you. He's had a break for almost 2 months. After the series against New Zealand, he wasn't in the team to South Africa. So that's a whole month and a half, 2 months off. So he's come into the team all fresh and raring to go. And you saw that with the way he batted, the way he bowled. And again, in the field, he was outstanding as always.
Okay, let's talk about another youngster who got his opportunity because of a few injuries. That was Sanju Samson. Somewhere we spoke about that the opposition wasn't top-notch. With that in mind, do you think Sanju, in some sense, wasted those two opportunities? Didn't get a chance to bat in the first T20I, but the next two got starts, could have easily converted those 30s or 20s into 60s, 70s, like Shreyas Iyer did. And with that in mind, did he waste those opportunities?
Sanju Samson's problem is at the international level has been shot selection and consistency. There's no question about that, because I think about 8 or 10 matches that he's played for India in the one days as well as in the T20, he's gone for the big shot a little too soon and has got out as a result. In the second T20 against Sri Lanka, he showed a lot of patience, and only after he was set that did he go for the big shots, and he looked very, very good. But yes, I think there was an opportunity for him to go from that 39 to maybe a 50, 60 not out, which would have given him a lot of confidence. And then in the game, in the third and final game, as an opening batsman, I think he got out early. So yes, I think there will be questions still that he needs to answer. He's got a few more matches, I'm sure. Depends on the kind of season he has in the IPL, and he could get some extra opportunities against the South Africans, and he's got to grab them, because if he's not going to score runs and show that he's capable of playing at this level, then maybe he'll miss the flight to Australia.
We've got a question here from one of the viewers. Kanav Kapoor has an interesting question. And I was reading a few comments of yours. You spoke about that there is some sort of worry when it comes to death bowling. India's death bowling may be a bit of a concern. His question is, who's your go-to bowler in the death overs apart from Jasprit Bumrah as of
now? I think Jasprit Bumrah, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, the way Bhuvi also came back, that was very, very good to see. Harshal Patel would have been the go-to bowler. But strangely, in these two matches where he got clobbered, he wasn't using that slower delivery. He was trying to bowl at about 130, 135 kilometers per hour, where the ball was coming on quite nicely onto the bat on these two pitches in Dharamshala, where the ball came nicely onto the bat, and Shanaka took advantage of that to smash it. Speaking of Shanaka, surprising that he hasn't been picked by any of the franchises, but I'm pretty certain that as a replacement player, he is definitely going to be amongst the first in case there's an injury or in case there's a withdrawal. Because there's still a whole month to go before the IPL starts, and you could have a situation where somebody gets injured, unfortunately gets injured. I'm pretty certain Shanaka would be the person that franchises will look to, because what we saw, the big hitting, plus the fact that he can come in and bowl a couple of overs, and he's a top fielder as well. But yes, Harshal Patel would have been the go-to bowler generally, but now Harshal Patel, with the way, unless he comes back to mixing those deliveries, which is what we saw in the IPL, he will at his pace, he will be taken for runs on good pitches, and in Australia you'll get similar kind of pitches.
Yeah. A lot of you are still asking the questions about no crowds in Mohali. Just go back onto a video if you've joined us late. Sunny Gavaskar's already answered that, so just check that out. Tanish Gujral, just to answer your question, you said could the test match not have been played in Delhi? Now these are last moment decisions. You can't change venues at the last moment. It's very tough to organize things, and I think the venue was decided earlier. Whether crowds would be allowed or not may have been a decision taken much later based on whatever is the corona situation. So I think at last moment that may not have been possible. But for the detailed answer, just go back and check our video out earlier as well. There was a suggestion, Sanibhai, since we were talking about India's batting order. Akash Raghav asked a question that can we not also look at in Australia Virat and Rohit to open, and then my extension to that is where will KL bat in that case?
Well, it all depends, on the form going into the to the World Cup. I think it's still early days. The World Cup is in October, and there's a series. There's a IPL. There's a series against South Africa in India. There's a series against England in England. So I think those will give you an indication what your batting lineup could be. And in case Rahul is not batting well, in case Rahul is not getting the runs, then clearly I think yes, you want Virat Kohli to go up the order as he did against England in the T20 series at home last year.
Okay, a question from Abhinay Singh. He says, in fact, it's a comment. He says, Ishan, looking at the way he's batted, still doesn't seem like ready to be the backup. As an opener, I'm guessing he's talking about. And then in that case, maybe Gaikwad can be tried. But I'll just extend that question into whatever little opportunities ISHAN KISHAN has got till now. There have been some questions about his rotation of strike or how he plays against slower bowlers. What have you made for him so far? And has he strengthened his case or weakened his case as far as his selection in the larger squad for the T20 World Cup is concerned so far?
The big advantage of ISHAN KISHAN was the fact that he's a kind of a 3-in-1 player. He could be an opening batsman. He could be somebody who bats at 5 or 6 and be the finisher. And he's a left-hander. And he also keeps wickets. So these were all the factors that were working in ISHAN KISHAN's favor. But what we saw against the West Indies, when the West Indies didn't bowl up to him, but bowled a little bit short, and then here in the match at Dharamshala, where there was a certain carry for the fast bowlers, it didn't look good. That didn't look good. At Lucknow, where he got a brilliant 89, everything was, just around the waist. And that's exactly where he likes the ball, because he is basically a front foot player. Even when he got hit, that was a nasty hit. You can see both his feet were outside the popping crease. And that just tells you that he's so used to getting onto the front foot that anything when the ball is pitched short, he doesn't have any back foot shots at the moment. All the shots are off the front foot. The hook shot, the pull shot, are all off the front foot. And they work when the pitch does not have extra bounce or extra pace. When it has, like in Dharamshala or even in Kolkata, where there was something, in Kolkata pitches had something in it. And when the West Indies bowled short of length, he was struggling a little bit because there is no back foot movement. So on Australian pitches, he might struggle. But then again, he's a young man, and we have known people to get better. Look at where they can improve. And if he applies himself, looks to get his back foot going, play on the back foot as well, then surely with the range of shots that he's got, he can come in the reckoning. But as of now, you would want to think that it'll be Rahul who will be your second wicket keeper, along with Rishabh Pant.
Okay, I've got about 3 more questions with you, Sanibhai. One, a lot of people talking about that template. Because there was a conversation about India consciously changing that template. Have you seen some sort of a difference? Have you seen that template as it was being spoken about being changed?
Yes, you could see that in the second game where they got almost 200 runs. In the first game when they almost got 200 runs. Look at the way they went. They had got, I think, 98 in the first 10 overs. Yes, it was a pitch where the ball was a lot. I mean, it was a lot easier to play shots because it came around the midriff, so it was a lot easier to play those shots. But that is what they're looking to do. They're looking to capitalize on the first 6 overs when there are only 2 fielders outside the 30-yard circle. And if you have a batting lineup as deep as India have, where Jadeja can come in at number 7 and turn the game around, then that is something that you got to look at, because you won't be able to get 98 every single time. But if you get to even 60, 70 in the first 6, 7 overs, then you're laying just the kind of platform for the team then to score more than 180 and get to 200 just about every other time. So I think that you could see that effort being made, and that is perhaps the reason why we saw Rohit Sharma play the shots that he did, despite the fact that the target was only 140 something. He wanted to finish it off early. He wanted to get in that first 6 overs, get those shots going, and put the pressure on the Sri Lankans. So yes, I think a conscious effort is being made to make use of the field restrictions in the first 6 overs.
Another youngster who's made it into the team is Ravi Bishnoi. One thing, I was looking at the data. I think 95% of his deliveries are only googly, maybe one or two flippers here and there, and then goes one leg break at the moment. Do you think, and have you noticed that as the games have progressed, whether it was the West Indies series or the Sri Lankan series, players tend to, or batsmen tend to figure him out gradually, that more often than not he's going to be bowling the googly? And is that then an area that he really needs to work on?
Look, it doesn't matter what the bowler bowls. I think we get a little too carried away by thinking that the bowler must have all the magic deliveries. No, if he's getting wickets with only the googly, so be it. If a bowler is getting wickets only with an outswinger, so be it. If a bowler is getting wickets only with the off spinner, so be it. As long as he's getting wickets, or in limited overs cricket, getting wickets and keeping the runs down, he's doing the job. And Bishnoi is doing the job. He brings a lot of energy onto the field. Look at the youngster. Look at the enthusiasm while fielding, and that's such a good sight. As a bowler, he's wanting to get the batsman every single time, and then, like I said, the energy that he brings to the team is fantastic. That's great to see.
Okay, Saiva, the test matches are coming up. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions related to that. The big question at the moment, there is no Cheteshwar Pujara. Who is India's number 3 batsman as things stand right now? There is a Shreyas Iyer, there is a Hanuma Vihari, Mayank or Shubman. One of them could fit in if they're not opening. Who's your number 3 at the moment?
Good question. My thinking is that the way Hanuma Vihari played in the series in South Africa, I think he'll probably get the preference to go number 3, because he's that kind of a player. Somebody who can, if an early wicket falls, somebody who can hold the innings up and then open out to play some shots. So he can be that number 3. At number 5, I think Shreyas Iyer, with the kind of form that he's been in, Shreyas Iyer will fit into the number 5 position.
Okay, finally, Saima, before I let you go, there is also that big news with regards to Ridhiman Saha being upset with how a journalist approached him. We don't know the details, so we're not getting into the specifics. But I just wanted to know from you, specifically from you, because how is it that journalists in your time, while you were playing cricket or when you retired, how did journalists approach you for interviews? 2 things I can be certain of: not a lot of them will have your number, so it will be very tough to WhatsApp you. So that's a bummer to begin with. And secondly, I doubt there would be any journalists around who could take the liberty of actually telling you that do the interview, or things aren't going to be great for you. So how was it during your time?
It was. I think it was a lot. There was a lot of interaction between journalists and the players when we played. I know of a lot of journalists who would come with the players for dinners too when we went overseas, particularly, and when we went to people who invited us to their houses for dinners. There were journalists who accompanied us for those dinners, and you could see that they kept the confidence. They kept your confidence. Like, there were things that might have been said, but they didn't publish it. So there was that level of trust in the time that I played in. Yes, there will always be the odd journalist who you probably won't agree with, and that's understandable. Not everybody will like what you do. Not every journalist likes every player. There will always be the odd player that the journalist doesn't like. That's a fact of life. You can't do anything. But as far as asking me for interviews, yes, they would send a message that they want to do that. Pretty much what happens even now with but now it's on the email that they send requests for interviews. But you see, because I'm contracted to you guys, I can't give any interviews. That's the issue. because otherwise there would have been no problem giving interviews. But it's you guys, the contract, which does not allow me. So I would imagine that the earlier days probably the relations between the players and the journalists were a lot better. For us, that was not outside noise. For us, it was something, which was, it was it was something where we felt that, because there were a lot of journalists who actually made some very, very good cricketing points about what the team could do, what the individual could do. So I think that was the case in the past.
Yeah, I mean, even though I wasn't covering cricket while you were playing, but I must say that even I've had some great relationship with a lot of players. Have had the opportunity, like you were saying, to go out for dinners on tour, and a lot of them would be very receptive to the feedback that you would get. But as you said, maybe there were a few, and I'm saying all this, because a lot of our viewers don't understand that relationship. So maybe on the outside, I thought it's best to address this, but just wanted to know, and again, for the benefit of our viewers, it's not a player's prerogative, right, to give an interview. He's in the sense doing a favor, speaking to a journalist, and in that sense, it's not my right. It's just a request that I can put forward to a player.
That is correct. I think at the end of the day, it's the individual's prerogative to say yes or no, and it's nothing personal. 99% of the time, it is not personal. Although clearly, yes, it has happened, and it will happen that a journalist who has been told no will hold it against you. He'll hold it against you. Again, that is totally understandable, because the journalist is trying to do a job, or trying to get an interview for his publication, or his organization, which is understandable. And if you do not do that, maybe he's been told by his editor, by his boss, to go and get this done, get this interview. If he doesn't get it, it looks as if he hasn't been able to do the job. So yes, there can be a bit of resentment over there as well. But at the end of the day, if you ask somebody, for an interview, it's for that other person to say yes or no.
That's right, and then the matter can end, depending on whether you've taken that very kindly or not. But Sai, thank you so much for taking out that much time speaking to us, and thanks everyone who has joined in. And I tried to take as many questions as I could and pose it to Mr. Gavaskar, and he tried his best to answer that. Is it less cold? I'm guessing much less cold compared to Dharamshala, but still you are in a t-shirt. It still must be slightly nippy, or maybe it's your room which is nicely heated, or outside must be nippy.
Man, it was freezing. So when we used to do the show just before the game started, the 1 hour show before the first ball was bowled, that time I was okay with a sweater and a blazer. But after that, the post game show, it was freezing. At least for me, from Mumbai, it was freezing. And I've now got to a stage where I will not take a chance. So I wasn't taking any chance. That's why I was wrapped up. I had my head covered as well, which is. Because I just wasn't, these youngsters on either side of me, they could probably bear the cold, because everybody's threshold of pain is different.
Yeah.
Similarly, everybody's threshold of bearing the cold or bearing the heat is different. Mine for bearing the cold is very, very low, and that's why I was wrapped up. Here, so far, it's been very good. It's going to be a day game as well. So I don't think we'll need to wear, the heavy clothing that we wore in Dharamshala. But tell you what a beautiful stadium, and what a beautiful place.
Well, it certainly is. I could see those snow-capped mountains. I've had the pleasure of going to that stadium as well. But Sai, we were lucky enough to be there commentating on that beautiful ground. And I think it's one of those rare occasions that it's happened towards the winter. Usually it's in the peak summers that you have games in Dharamshala. So that was another beautiful sight. Thank you so much once again for joining us. We'll, of course, have Sai back with us right at the start of that test match, which is going to be Virats 100 test match. And we will celebrate that on Sports Today. If you haven't subscribed, please do so now. And thanks so much for watching. Thank you.